Members, the only reason, in retrospect, after reviewing this, HF 8 probably shouldn't even be here, because of the scope of what is the jurisdiction of this committee was pretty much covered in public safety for 5 hours. So, but if we took it off the agenda, y'all would freak out and think we're doing something sneaky. So we didn't. We kept it on. However, the testimony is going to be restricted to the appeals process for denial of license transfer, starting at line 3.22, hearing upon denial of transferee permit, and subdivision 13, line 7.2. That said, most of the testimony that I heard the other night was pretty similar on both bills. It was just a general objection or a general support of the bills. So if you did come, you can save that testimony, and we'll be going into great detail on HF 9. Okay. So that said, Representative Pinto, you're up first, and who's moving his bill? HF 8. Representative Considine moves that House File 8 be recommended to be referred to the Ways and Means Committee. Representative Pinto, we have the bill before us, and there is an amendment. Is that right, the A16?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Who's offering this? Representative Carlson moves the A16 amendment. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Motion passes. Representative Pinto, to your bill as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I should note, I don't think that I actually have a copy of that amendment. If the page would mind bringing a copy. Oh, there we go. Oops, Representative Richardson's getting it to me. Thank you. So make sure that I have that. Members, many of you have heard me say before that we face an epidemic in this country. Americans die from guns at rates many times higher than people in other countries. And members, this should be unacceptable to every one of us. And indeed, Minnesotans, led by young people, are demanding action. Members, as we consider that action, we need to keep in mind that millions of Americans, hundreds of thousands of Minnesotans, use firearms responsibly for hunting, for personal protection, for sport, as a hobby. Members, we can uphold the rights of these responsible gun owners and at the same time do more to keep guns out of the hands of people who have shown themselves to be dangerous. We can do both of those things, and the bills before you tonight do both. House File 8 would require that the seller of a gun make sure, through a criminal background check, that the purchaser of the gun isn't a violent felon, a domestic abuser, or otherwise prohibited from having it. House File 9, which you hear shortly, would create a court process where someone proven to be dangerous, based on concrete evidence, could be temporarily prohibited from having a firearm. The two bills work in combination. I'm joined by the author of House File 9, Representative Richardson, and she and I will address the bills in tandem. So House File 8, the bill before you right now, again requires that a criminal background check occur when a gun changes hands. Now don't those kinds of checks occur already? Well, yeah, they do, if the seller is a licensed dealer. But sales by other people don't currently require such a check. House File 8 simply requires that all transfers of firearms have a criminal background check, of course, with plenty of exceptions, such as between family members. The way it works is currently, in order to purchase from a licensed dealer, a seller has to have a permit to purchase or a transferee permit. The bill simply extends that same requirement to purchase from a private seller, again, somebody who doesn't have a license. The buyer would have to get a permit, again, the same one they need in order to purchase from a licensed dealer, and show it to the seller. They both keep a record of the transfer, and then they produce it, if necessary, as part of a criminal investigation. Members, criminal background checks on all sales is a proven policy. It's in use in more than 20 states. Those states have lower rates of gun death. It's also a policy with broad support from health professionals, from the Walz-Flanagan administration, from the more than 10,000 police and prosecutors who are members of the Law Enforcement Coalition in Minnesota, and more than 90% of the public, according to a Star Tribune poll. Mr. Chair, I know the scope of discussion for House File 8 in this committee is quite limited. I have a number of testifiers ready to go, but they would be discussing other issues. And so instead, I'm simply going to note briefly the relevant portions of the bill per the chair's directive. And then with your permission, Mr. Chair, those testifiers are just going to be ready to answer questions, address concerns when we get to that portion of the hearing. So I would simply, Mr. Chair, just mention the sections that you've noted, just to highlight them. And then that will be the end of the testimony in favor. We'll simply stand for questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Please do.
Okay. Members, lines 3.22 to 3.24 is the first section that's under the committee's jurisdiction as described by the chair. This is a section that provides for a hearing upon the denial of a transferee permit. The denial may be, the appeal, pardon me, may be made to the district court. We want to point out that is as an opportunity for court review of a denial of a permit. There's a separate discussion about the circumstances under which the permit may be denied or approved. The second section is lines 7.20 to 7.26. And again, this has to do with the appeal of a determination by chief or sheriff that the person is prohibited from possession. Again, there's an appeal that can be made to district court, and the court is limited to the determination referenced in 7.24 to 7.26. And the final piece, Mr. Chair and members, is lines 10.16 to 10.17, which have to do with immunity from a violation of charge of violating the section that relates to transfers if the person possesses the record of transfer. And this was referenced in my overview, Mr. Chair and members, that both the seller and buyer need to keep a record of the transfer. They do not produce it to anyone else. They keep it themselves unless there's a criminal investigation, in which case they have to produce it. Mr. Chair, those are the three sections that were referenced, and this concludes the testimony in favor, and then we'll stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Pinto. Are there folks, keeping in mind what I said at the beginning of the hearing, are there folks who want to speak to specifically those sections of HF 8? Like I said, you probably want to save the full course of your commentary for HF 9, which we'll be doing here momentarily. But is there anyone who wants to speak to those sections of HF 8? For or against? You're in back, come on down.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome to the committee.
Members of the House Judiciary Committee, my name is Brian Gosch. I'm a lawyer and registered lobbyist for the National Rifle Association. I'll try to keep my remarks just to the sections you referenced.
Thank you.
The appeal sections are existing statute, but they also tie into some of the new provisions within Representative Pinto's bill in House File 8. In that section 2.20 through 3.3, and also when you look at sections, oh gosh, it's going to be
It's a little complicated.
5.28 through 6.1. These are new sections of law, give the law enforcement officers, the sheriffs, and the police chiefs a new reason to deny a transferee permit. And this kind of ties in House File 9 a bit because it brings in some of that language of a danger to oneself or others. And it's rather broad, gives a lot of subjectivity to the law enforcement officers. And so I think that would make it a little bit harder on appeal, given the language of those sections and law enforcement basically kind of working off a hunch, being able to base it on a previous contact with the person, then deny that person a transferee permit. And so for that reason and others, we would oppose House File 8. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Be down here. Any questions? Okay. Mr. Dorr? Oh, Representative Lucero, did you have a question?
Just not for the testifier.
Okay. Mr. Dorr? Come on down. Welcome to the committee. Welcome back to the committee, Mr. Dorr.
Yes, my name's Rob Dorr. I'm the political director at the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. I did want to point out that, again, sticking with your request to stay within the purview of this committee, the denial of the permit, this bill greatly expands the reasons why somebody could be denied a permit to purchase or a permit to carry, a permit to purchase. And with that, this kind of brings us back to where we were prior to the shall issue permit system in Minnesota in 2003, where a big catalyst for that movement was the unreasonable and really unjustified denials of people of their permits to carry, which turned Minnesota into a shall issue state. With all of these provisions, you're opening that door up again. Another issue that comes up is the appeals process is mentioned there, but what isn't mentioned is any sort of remedy for the person who's maybe wrongfully denied their permit. Under the permit to carry law 624-714, a person who is wrongfully denied a permit to carry can sue the sheriff in that instance, and should the court rule in their favor that the permit to carry was wrongfully denied, they get legal fees from the sheriff, and that provision isn't present in this. So there's really nothing stopping a police chief from denying every single permit to purchase and saying, sue me. And there's little recourse except for a lot of money for the law-abiding gun owners.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Dorr? Mr. Dorr, so is that the primary, so your basis for saying this takes us back to pre-2003 is because there is no fees provision. Is that?
I believe so because, Mr. Chair, when the sheriffs have no incentive, or police chiefs in this case have no incentive to deny somebody, or disincentive rather, to deny somebody, they're more likely to be overzealous in their denials. Now, this may not be every police chief, this may not be every sheriff, but the problem was certainly there prior to 2003 with the permit to carry, and I think the problem would definitely be present under this bill.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Questions for Mr. Dorr? Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Dorr.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, real quick, this is Ben Gusweiler. He's from the Blaine Trap team. His commentary is a little bit outside of your scope, but that message wasn't communicated prior, so I asked the chair's leniency in letting him communicate his message.
Of course. Thank you. Welcome to the committee.
Hi, my name is Ben Gusweiler. I'm 12 years old, and I shoot trap and skeet in the Minnesota High School League. Before I shot for my sport, I played hockey. When I played hockey, I got a concussion, which made me quit hockey because I did not want another concussion. One day, when I saw a flyer in my school for a firearm safety class, I decided to sign up. I focused, worked hard, and learned responsibility and proper care with a firearm. I took all the tests and got 100%. Now let's move forward a bit. About 2 weeks later, when everything was said and done, I did the field day, and I got my firearm safety and hunter education certificate. This meant that I could go and hunt and shoot firearms. When I got my firearm safety certificate, I was open to a new world of sports hunting that changed my life forever. The summer of that year, I shot and shot and shot. This quickly became one of the best parts of my life. I met people and friends through the sport of clay shooting and learned responsibility for guns. This is a sport where in the National High School Clay Target League, 0 injuries or deaths have happened. At the same time, people are trying to make it almost impossible for me and my friends to participate in this league. This will not only hurt me and my friends, and it will make it much harder than it needs to be for future generations. Why are they not worried about other sports like hockey with 3.5 million injuries per year from Johns Hopkins Medicine.org? I simply just want this sport to be here for me and for my friends. For the ones that are babies right now, to be able to do this, to experience a sport that you can have loads of fun in, learn responsibility and how to be safe. If someone in our league does anything unsafe with a firearm when shooting, they'll be immediately taken off the range and will not be shooting for the rest of the day. If that same person decides to be unsafe again, they will get kicked out of the Minnesota Trap and Skeet League. If SF1261 and HF8 becomes a law in Minnesota, it would make things more confusing and harder than it needs to be. The rules become so confusing that my parents or my coach could accidentally be arrested for trying to help me and my friends do what we love. This law could take the fastest growing youth sport in the entire state and throw it away. All the things I worked so hard for would mean nothing. Shotguns are only dangerous if you don't know how to use them. And all this law is doing is making it complicated for young people to learn how to handle firearms safely and respectfully. Also, this law would make it so that people would be required to write a really long form just to hand it from one person to another. What happens if my shotgun breaks in the middle of a round? My coach can't hand me another gun to use filling out all sorts of other paperwork. I could be disqualified from a round, and for why? Everyone in the sport has gone to lots of classes and took a test that lasts half a day. We compete on a range with lots of safety people. And how do these new laws help? All they do is ruin my favorite sport because people will be afraid to join. They won't be able to understand how this all works. Who can bring shotguns to the range? Who can hand them from one person to another? What kind of form do you have to fill out to hand it to someone? For the ones that play the sport, if this law gets passed, I guarantee you it will ruin for them too. In conclusion, these laws, SF1, 261, and HF8, would make everything worse for anyone who wants to shoot now and in the future.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Gusweiler. You did very well. Are there any questions from the committee, Mr. Gusweiler? Thank you very much. We're not going to grill you. You're 12. You did better than most paid lobbyists up there anyway. Members, please, I will tell you, I appreciate the applause from Mr. Gusweiler, but we are going to run an orderly committee, and I'll just note that there won't be any demonstrations from the gallery during the time because this is official business. Thank you. Are there anyone else who would like to speak to those sections, specifically those sections? Professor Olson, you're going to speak just to those sections?
Absolutely.
Okay. Who wants to talk? Okay, Representative Barr.
Real quick question for Mr. Gusweiler. What's your best trap round? Fantastic. Thank you, sir.
Out of 25.
Professor Olson.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pinto, members of the committee, my name is Joseph Olson. I'm a professor emeritus at Mitchell Hamlin Law School. I'm not speaking on their behalf, obviously. I've been president of the Gun Owners Civil Rights Alliance for 30 years. I've been lobbying here on gun issues for 30 years. And so I have recollection that goes back. The reason why the appeal procedure in the section that has to do with permits to purchase is so restricted or so narrow is because the only grounds 30 years ago and up until today for denying was that you were in violation of state or federal law, which is a pretty obvious, easy thing to determine. But this bill adds in that you can be denied because you're a danger to self or others. Now, that's a provision that we put in the permit to carry bill at the request of the sheriffs. No one disagreed with putting it in there. But in order to balance that off, we have a appeal procedure in the permit to carry bill that puts the burden of proof on the sheriff. They agreed to take it. It puts the burden of proof on the sheriffs by clear and convincing evidence. They agreed to carry that burden. And it provides that if the sheriff doesn't prevail, if the sheriff doesn't prevail, if the petitioner prevails, the petitioner gets legal fees for doing so. Because there's a big difference between saying, are you in violation of state or federal law, and saying, are you a danger to self or others, which opens up an enormous slew of everything from psychobabble to psychiatric evidence to statements to police across the board. The appeals section in this bill needs to be strengthened to balance off that language about dangerous to self or others. Thank you. And we oppose the bill because it hasn't been changed.
Thank you.
And other reasons.
Thank you, Professor Olson. I did use the word psychobabble to a therapist once, and it wasn't appreciated, I found out, so it might be
I didn't
offensive.
intend for it to be appreciated.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
thank you. Any other questions for Professor Olson? Representative Lucero, you didn't? Okay. Did you have a question for Professor Olson? Oh, okay. Who are you?
Good evening. My name is Ben Rust. I am the General Counsel for the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus here in opposition to HF8.
Are you going to speak just to the sections that we put out there?
I will, but maybe in a
I don't like the but. Just the I will is adequate.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead then.
As Professor Olson knows, and I have nowhere near as much experience as he does, whenever you're legislating in the area of gun law, you've got an intersection between state and federal law. In my private practice, a portion of what I do is appeals for folks who are denied on a NICS check. And that's where I think that this has some potential for mischief. And you caught me unaware because I had a whole thing going on here. Now I'm
We got another bill.
testimony.
You should be here for that.
The essence of it is basically that upwards of 90% of NICS denials are eventually overturned. They're false positives. The process to appeal a NICS denial is almost completely void of due process. It's an administrative process. You send a letter and fingerprints off to the FBI, and they'll get back to you. Literally, you can't call them to follow up. There's no one that you can talk to. I have a client right now who we filed his appeal in February of 2017 and still have not heard back. I've talked to another attorney who practices in this area today, and he knows of folks who've been waiting for 4 years for an appeal of their NICS denial. And there is no effective remedy to accelerate this because it's an administrative process. If you attempt to sue the FBI to get a decision faster, your case will be dismissed by the judge because you have not exhausted your administrative remedies. The way that that plays into HF8 is if I am attempting to purchase a firearm, I have to go to my police chief or my sheriff. I will get a background check that includes a NICS check. If I am a false positive and my NICS check comes back and the sheriff cannot issue me a permit or my police chief cannot issue me a permit, I have no alternative. I cannot obtain a firearm. I have to appeal the NICS denial, and that could take me anywhere from 3 months to 4 years. And there's no remedy. There's no way I can get around it. Currently in Minnesota, I can get around it. And the FBI will actually send you a letter back telling you exactly the record that they think makes you disqualified. I had a client who was actually going to be a security guard at the Dar al-Farouk Islamic Center who was denied for this very reason. He had the same name and a birth date that was 1 year off from someone who had been civilly committed 10 times. We got him cleared, but it took a while. If HF8 passes, there will be no method for them to obtain a firearm. If this guy's appeal that was going to be a security guard, if his appeal had taken 3 years, he has an avenue right now that he can go obtain a firearm legally. He is not legally prohibited. There's a mistake in a database somewhere that prevents him from doing it. He can legally in Minnesota go buy a firearm from a private seller. If you pass this bill, he can't. If you run the numbers, there were over 600,000 NICS checks run in Minnesota in 2018. If 1% of those are denied, which is the national average, that gives you about 6,000 people. If 90% of those are false positives, that's about 5,000 people a year that are being denied their Second Amendment rights incorrectly and have absolutely no way to appeal it other than to send a letter to the FBI and wait.
Mr. Rusk, can you wrap it up, please?
Yes, that's it.
Thank you very
I
much.
think that's unconscionable, and I oppose the bill. And
Thank
so
you for your
does Minnesota Gun
testimony.
Owners Caucus. Have a good night.
That is it for testimony on those sections in opposition to House File 8. I am not aware of any other amendments on House File 8. Committee discussion. Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I guess the question would be to the bill author. Upon the adoption of your amendment, which added clarity to a digital copy of the record for a retention requirement from both the transferor and the transferee. And then when I'm looking at the subdivision 5, the immunity section, a person is immune if they are able to produce these records. So my question is, if a person is 24 years old, and if this were to become law, and 50 years goes by, and they're now 74 years old, and during the course of that 50 years, they, in the case if they had a physical copy and they lost it for whatever reason, they were moving houses, or if they had a digital copy and their phone was stolen, or if it was run over and not recoverable, would that person then still be guilty then of a gross misdemeanor of the failure to be able to produce that 50 years later?
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Lucero, the requirement is to keep a copy which can be in digital form. So it is true that the requirement does continue all the way through. There's not a requirement to hang on to a piece of paper or necessarily in a phone or wherever else. And presumably, I know you're well aware that technology can continue to change. The idea was whatever the form is, there should be the ability to produce that copy. But it does continue for the extended time. It does.
Representative Lucero? Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion? Representative Grassel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess this is just a little tidbit from some of the statements that Representative Pinto made in the beginning as far as the study that was done and as far as reference to law enforcement support. I'd just like to ask the representative, what study did you have that showed the United States is one of the highest in gun deaths? Can you reference that or tell us some place to go to find that?
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Grassel, whenever I've been looking at this, I feel like that information is all over the place. I'm happy, Representative Grassel and members of the committee, with the chair's permission, to send that information around. But I think if you just I don't think there's anything controversial about that at all, that the rate at which Americans die from discharge of firearms is significantly higher than other industrialized countries. But perhaps you have a reason to doubt that, Representative Grassel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I do. There are also studies out there that I'm just going to throw it out there because we're throwing studies around right now that shows that we are actually a lot lower than the rest of the world as far as gun deaths. So, and I can find those studies too. In reference to law enforcement support, you said that you have quite a bit of law enforcement support, and the checking that I have done, having a lot of contacts in the Sheriff's Association and the Chiefs Association, the unions and so on, everybody I've talked to in my district and around District 1 and 2, as far as the LEOs, the chiefs, sheriffs, and just the boots on the ground officers and deputies, they are vehemently opposed to these bills. I just want to get that on the record because I know there's boards that sometimes put statements out there, but from what I'm gathering, these chiefs and some of the sheriffs have been outside of the realm of this decision making. So the ones that I'm talking to do not support these bills, sir.
Representative Mueller.
Oh.
Did you want to respond to it?
Mr. Chair, part of the reason to, if it's okay with the chair, I'd be inclined perhaps to someone from the Law Enforcement Coalition could simply come up and just confirm that support, given Representative Grassel's doubting of it.
Well, I'll tell you what, he did refer to opposition to both bills. And if they could do that testimony on the second one, that would be handy. Is that okay?
Certainly, Mr. Chair.
Representative Mueller.
Mr. Chair, thank you. So the American Journal of Medicine reports that Americans are 25 times more likely to be murdered with a gun than people in other countries, and also that the gun death rate in the United States is 10 times that of other high-income countries. Thank you.
Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Per my previous question to the bill author, a member of the audience here said that federal firearms licensed dealers, the retention period is only 20 years. So assuming that's accurate, I guess the question then I would have, Mr. Chair, for the bill author is, why is your retention a lifetime when FFL is only 20 years?
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Lucero, that's good information. I'd be happy to chat with you further about that. The concern is when someone transfers the firearm pursuant to this method, that is a really important step, right? We know that when firearms are handed over, we want to make sure that the person who's receiving it is in fact eligible to receive it, and that later on, if there's a criminal investigation, recognize that this person was not eligible to, that the seller have that information. So perhaps a 20-year period would make sense. I'm happy to talk with you further about that. But the most important point is that we want to make sure that sellers, in fact, keep those records, because right now there is absolutely no requirement, as you're aware, I believe, so long as the seller doesn't know that the person is prohibited, they can transfer that firearm, no questions asked.
Representative Cicero. Thanks. Any other discussion on House File 8 as amended? Representative Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Mueller, I was looking up some information as you were. Can you repeat, just so I make sure I heard you correctly, the gun death rate in the United States is how many times more than other countries?
Representative Pinto.
This is to Representative Mueller.
Oh, Representative Mueller, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Carlson, so it's Americans are 25 times more likely to be murdered with a gun than people in other countries, and the gun death rate in the United States is 10 times that of other high-income countries.
Okay, so not,
Carlson.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So not 25% and 10%, 25 times and 10 times more. Thank you.
Any other discussion by the committee? Chair Johnson.
Chair Lesh, I'm just looking up on pbs.org. United States is number 20 at 10.6 per thousand. That's unfortunate that it also, but it does include suicide. And United States has about, or Minnesota, or the United States, in fact, has, I believe the suicide rate is 49 or about 45% by firearm. That includes those numbers. But El Salvador, the rate there is 39.2 per 1,000. The United States is number 20th. We're not up on top. We're farther down.
Chair Scott.
That was sort of my question, but I also wanted to see if there was any breakdown as to, of those gun deaths, how many of the guns were, how many of them were obtained illegally? Do you have that data?
You're asking this of who, Chair Scott?
Either one of the statisticians over there.
Okay, anyone want to take that bait?
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Representative Carlson.
We were busy looking up statistics. We didn't hear the question.
Chair Scott, can you repeat the question?
The question was of those gun deaths that you spoke of, how many of those were caused by illegally obtained firearms?
Representative Carlson.
Mr. Chair, Representative Scott, give me a minute. We'll look that up for you. But again, to the point of this bill, this would do a great amount of good in reducing the amount of that. My understanding of this House File 8 is to require background checks, which would reduce the amount of illegal gun sales. So I appreciate your support for the bill.
Any other comments regarding House File 8 as amended? What's it? Oh, okay. Representative Considine.
What?
Do you have a question?
I did not.
Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members. Representative Pinto, I just wondered if you or anyone else here might have the statistics on what the gun deaths are by firearms in Minnesota. We heard the national numbers on different places, but for Minnesota and also those obtained illegally. I know Mr. Representative Carlson said that the background checks would help stop illegal gun sales, but I'm not sure I understand how that would happen because right now the background checks are for legal gun sales. I don't know that it would affect illegal gun sales, so if you could explain that. Thank you.
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I do think, Representative Robbins, thank you for bringing that up, because I feel like that Scott brought up in the hearing a lot last week. There's, well, this is already illegal. You're making something already. No, so let's be really clear about this. The idea is the seller has the gun. The seller sells the gun to somebody else. That person may or may not be a prohibited purchaser. There is nothing illegal about that transfer so long as the seller doesn't know the person is a prohibited purchaser. And so what this does is says that there should be a background check to find out, is the person in fact legally able to receive the firearm, and simply providing that requirement. So, so regardless, if that term illegals, illegal transfer, we're talking about a situation where someone who is prohibited, a violent felon, a domestic abuser, not allowed to have a gun, but they can simply go and purchase a gun from a private party without there being any kind of requirement to find out, imposed on the seller, to confirm, is this person actually eligible to receive the gun? And that's that concern. I do want to note, in terms of rankings, the other countries in front of us that I've seen in that list, it's true, El Salvador, Venezuela, Guatemala, Colombia, these are very great places to be. I want to point out that when you compare with countries that we would want to compare ourselves to in this statistic, Afghanistan, these are countries that I think that we probably would not want to be comparing ourselves to when it comes to rates of firearm death. So the fact we're number 20, that's true. There's 170 countries in the world, so it's true we're not number 1, but boy, we sure are up there.
Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Representative. Just to follow up, does anyone have any Minnesota-specific statistics? And also, secondly, to your point about the illegal gun sales, I appreciate that, but I wondered, is there any numbers about when felons or illegal purchasers obtain firearms now? How many of them are done through private sales versus how many are just purchased illegally, which I would expect would be the higher number?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Representative Robbins, we can sort of have a sense of that from the inverse, in that there are thousands of times per year that a purchase is attempted at a dealer. So there's currently a background check, and the purchase is stopped via background check as the person is a prohibited purchaser. So that is true in Minnesota, and that's true. I mean, the thousands. I know that happens often in Minnesota. I want to be careful, especially in the evening here, about making sure that I'm getting a little bit tired. But certainly in Minnesota, and certainly in the country. So we know right now that prohibited people are going and purchasing from dealers when there's a background check, so that's stopped, that's good. So then how much more often are they purchasing in private transactions to be covered by this? And then certainly situations they're obtaining firearms that would not be, whether obtaining through stealing or other methods that folks are referring to illegal. So I don't have those numbers with me at this point. I'm kind of trying to keep a list now of points that folks have asked about to make sure to provide information afterwards to committee members. But that'd be the situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Herr.
Thank you, Chair Lesch. So I guess I would just like to, I'm a little bit troubled by this conversation we're having, just because we're, first of all, not sticking to sort of the things that we're supposed to within this committee.
That's a good point. Make a great point.
But secondly, that I think that we're talking about data and statistics when there's no way that we would ever have complete data and statistics, right? Because there's a lot of rules and laws that prohibit us from collecting actually real data. I mean, the Department of Health is prohibited from collecting data on the legal ownership of firearms. We're prevented from collecting data. And so whatever that we do have is what is actually reported, which means there are huge pieces of information missing. So we can sit here and go back and forth about whose data is more correct, but that data is already wrong and skewed to begin with, because we are not allowed in this country to collect data the way we need to actually have a comprehensive picture of the real issue here. So I would just encourage us to stick these points here, because we will fight all day on data that is already incorrectly based in how it's collected and put out there.
Thank you, Representative Herr. I think it was Mark Twain said, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. Representative Zhang. Oh, you're not, okay. Representative Grassel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm just looking at some data here. Got my own data, people. In 2017, Minnesota had the 11th lowest violent crime rate in the country, beating strict gun control states, Hawaii, New York, Massachusetts, and California. The 6th lowest murder rate, 8th lowest aggravated assault rate, the 18th lowest robbery rate, beating the strict gun control states of Massachusetts, Colorado, New York, Illinois, California, Maryland, and the District of Columbia. When compared with the national crime rates, Minnesota's crime rates are significantly lower and have been for decades. Minnesota's crime rates are significantly below the national average for violent crime, murder, robbery, aggravated assaults. Minnesota crime rates per 100,000 residents compared to the national crime rates, 1960 to 2017. Source, FBI's Crime in the United States reports. So I can cite the source, the information, and I have yet to hear the source of the information for any stats that have come out to the contrary, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Grosso. Any other comment? Representative Herr?
Thank you, Chair Lesh. And this is not a direct response to that particular question, but I was on the Police Civilian Review Commission, and that all departments actually report differently. They're required to report different things. And so again, even though that data sounds very sound, and actually there's quite a bit of flaw in the way that so if we all really care about data, we should work on creating laws in which allow people to actually collect data in a way that we can all actually use it. And maybe that could be a conversation for another day in another committee for another bill. So I would encourage that if we all really care about the data, to look at all of the laws that are in place now so that we can't actually collect the right data and that there's no uniformity in how we ask people to collect the data, which means we'll never have the right information to look at to make a good decision. So I think that's a really big issue we should all work on.
Thank you, Representative.
Mr. Chair,
Representative Grosso.
that came from the FBI.
Okay.
They get their information
So did
from
Waco.
us first, too.
So, okay, any other comments about House File 8 as amended? I would just say before we vote on this, I used to prosecute traffic crimes when you get a hit and run. Someone show up in court and they say, well, you got your license number, and they say, I sold that car. If they say that, well, where's your transfer of title? We'd charge them with failure to transfer title and get restitution for the hit and run. You're required to do it for a car. I don't think it's that inordinate to do it for a gun. That said, some legitimate points are brought up by folks about the changing and modification of this prior to 2003. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say. With the motion, we do have two more now. They're just popping up. Okay, Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I know both bill authors are up there, but I think we're on HF 8, so I would ask for a roll call on HF 8.
Roll call's been called for. Representative O'Neill.
I just wanted to respond to just your comment really quick about comparing it to car titles. The difference, I would point out, Chair Lesh, is the fact that this is held by a private person, not by the government. Not saying that we want this to be held by the government, but it's very, very different because, DVS actually holds those titles, so they have it in their database and everything else. So it's a very different thing. If I lose my car title, which actually happened during my divorce, I can go and get a hold of DVS with certain information and get the title back. There is no option for this, Chair Lesh. So this is a real problem. This is a real issue. If the only copy of it is held with the person that has the gun, then that's an issue because it is held nowhere else. And so I would point that out, that it is very different than a car title. Thank you, Mr. Chair Lesh.
It's a little different than a car as well, because a vehicle, you have a privilege to own a vehicle, but it's a constitutional right on the firearms.
Thanks. Seeing no other commentary, roll call has been called for. Chair votes aye.
Representative Mueller?
Yes.
Representative Scott? No. Representative Barr?
No.
Representative Cantrell?
Yes.
Representative Carlson?
Yes.
Representative Considine?
Yes.
Representative Grosso?
Nope.
Representative Hassan?
Yes.
Representative Herr?
Yes.
Representative Johnson?
No.
Representative Lucero?
No.
Representative Mariani?
Yes.
Representative Noor?
Yes.
Representative O'Neill?
No.
Representative Robbins?
No.
Representative Zhang?
Yes.
On a vote of 10 to 7, the motion does prevail, and the bill has been re-referred to Ways and Means as amended.